Hammer and Nail, the show where we don't just talk about politics, we break it down, dissect it, and sometimes we hit it with the hammer of truth. I'm Kendall Pierson alongside Chris Hammer, Bryce Howard, and our very special guest, Levi Ault. We're here to nail the issues that matter the most. Welcome to the last episode of the semester. We have a lot of things to discuss that correlate with the last episode we had with Levi. Over the weekend, the Trump administration ordered immediate arrangements of a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to an El Salvador prison. The Trump administration acknowledged that Kilmar Abrigo Garcia's removal was, quote, an administrative error, but they were also defending it, saying allegedly that Abrigo Garcia has ties to MS-13, which is a gang that partakes in human trafficking. Levi, I want to go ahead and start with you on this because the last time you were on the show, you were very passionate about this. You and Chris were like barking, getting at it. So is there any proof that this man was part of MS-13?
I do not think there is sufficient proof for this man to be identified without any court hearing where, you know, the whole idea is that when somebody says somebody is something right, how do we judge that? We judge the evidence. And in the legal sphere, when we're judging with people's legal rights, right, to be here or to not, the way to prove that is with evidence in front of a court of law, right, in accordance to that, you know, there's a prosecution and then there's a defendant, and they're trying to defend their claim that they're either not a member of a gang, or they're not a member, or they're not an illegal alien, or they're not whatever you might be. But to do that, you have to present evidence, and the only thing the Trump administration has done is give a picture of a couple of tattoos, and all of a sudden he's MS-13, and there are a huge wealth of data and reporting on this that there is no one tattoo or a series of tattoos that clearly indicate membership to MS-13. That's just not true. There isn't that type of literature out there right now. And so, and even if he was a member of a gang, and even if he was a member of MS-13, there's a way to handle it and to process this individual. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a way to do it within our legal system. That doesn't mean, because the Trump administration claimed they themselves that they made a mistake. So how could this mistake not happen again? And the way we prevent that is to guarantee due process to every single individual in America.
Okay,
so
Bryce.
You got it, Bryce.
Well, I was going to say, I wanted to hop to Bryce because I know you were, before we even started the show, you were talking about the tattoos.
Yeah, I was like looking into the tattoos, and so he had a tattoo, I believe it was on his pointer finger. It was like a marijuana leaf, like symbolizing the M, and a smiley face that they're believing to symbolize the S. I'm just allegedly. And then I believe it was a cross that was allegedly indicating a 1, and a skull that was allegedly indicating a 3. And while I haven't read in it too much, so I don't know if that is like actually a gang tattoo, but I do want to say that if that is a gang tattoo, MS-13 is one of the most dangerous gangs in the world. And if he is proven to be a member of MS-13, regardless of the situation, he needs to be out of this country because those people are incredibly dangerous and have committed an atrocity.
Oh, absolutely.
Of crimes.
But just to be clear, though, you like you said, you can't guarantee that those tattoos correlate with the membership of that gang. But Bryce, right? Is that true or false?
Yeah, I mean,
Kendall has a tattoo. Oh my God, Kendall, are you a part of MS? Oh no.
That's a little
I'm not.
That's a little stretching.
No, it's not because because she's
I'd like
white.
to bring up another point of this. When I was reading up on this,
all right.
I'm serious.
Attorney General Pam Bondi is the one that's doing a lot of the work on this because she is very much, wanting to get rid of MS-13. And a quote that stuck out to me is back in 2019 when this Maryland man, which I'll get into that later, but he has a quote saying the reason he doesn't want to go back is because rival gangs. What stuck out to me was rival gangs, meaning that he's in a gang.
Rivals
and there's
with MS-13 or something?
Either way, I'm saying even if it's not MS-13, shouldn't that show that he has history with gang activity?
Well, for one, okay.
I see where
that's a bad look for him. That's a very bad look for him.
Also, that could just mean because there's rival gangs that he could be subject to violence.
Indicating that he's a part of a gang.
No, that doesn't indicate that he's
That's
a part
what
of a gang.
rival means.
No, it indicates that there's rival gangs that are competing constantly in Southern and South America. It does not indicate. And even if you're right, why can't he go in front of a judge and have this proven? And then he's sent out, and guess what? All the liberals that you might think are crying about this, and I'm a liberal, and I absolutely want MS-13 gang members out of this country. But what we can't do, we cannot send potentially people who are not affiliated with this gang to be wrongly accused without any due process for this to get proven. Bryce, Chris, both of you believe, right, that that people have to prove who somebody is, right? Like if you commit a crime, somebody has to prove that, right? And this is the injustice. I believe, and also I agree with Donald Trump and Republicans that we need to combat illegal immigration, and we need to make sure that the people who are here aren't committing crimes, and that they're being, lawful stewards, and lawful individuals within this country, right?
Right.
I mean, but
and I would like to bring up another point. This brings up when I put Maryland man in air quotes here.
Yeah.
This guy is not Maryland man. He is in the United States illegally. So even if he wasn't connected with a gang, he's still being deported. I don't think it's without merit. If you're in the country
he's not
illegally,
just being deported though.
He's being sent to the prison, yes, and I understand that in El Salvador. And that's where we get into the judges. I know you want to talk about the judges in that. That was the conversation we had last week, which, again, just quick point notice. It's hilarious how we haven't had a show in a little bit, and this is still relevant.
I know, right?
Stories.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
And Pete Hegseth thing, which we won't get into,
but I would like to point out, like, this judge is saying that he needs to be released from this prison in El Salvador. However, the judicial branch doesn't control, doesn't control the executive branch making foreign decisions like that. They have no power over that. So that's my question of, like, why do we have this judge that says he needs to be released from the prison, knowing that you don't have the power to do that?
Well, I disagree fundamentally, is that the courts, and this isn't some liberal saying, the Supreme Court just came out with a decision, I think it was 2 nights ago or last night. I get my perception messed up with time. It's late, guys, finals week, or next week. That said that you have to halt transporting people to El Salvador using this Aliens Enemies Act. It was in the use of Texas, right? But that was where it pertained. And they said you cannot send people, you can't deport people using this law, because there have been issues where the Trump administration is not complying with the lower court's decision. And so this is SCOTUS implying that, yes, not only do we, the judiciary, have this jurisdiction, but the Trump administration is in open rebellion against it and trying to rush this process along to openly defy the jurisdiction that both the lower courts and SCOTUS has set for this.
I just would like to rebuttal that a little bit. What I saw is that is what Levi described is the decision from the lower court, and I understand that. But what I saw was the Supreme Court saying that no, Trump can do foreign acts like this. However, I will say the Supreme Court made a suggestion. They made a very strong suggestion that maybe he shouldn't be kept in this prison. But again, that ultimately comes down to if El Salvador wants to do this and if the executive branch, aka the Trump administration, wants to do that. I just want to point out that I think that Supreme Court suggestions aren't Supreme Court laws.
I have to have the final word on this, Kendall. I don't want to go.
Me and you were both very similar. We have to have the final word.
All right.
I need to say this. This is so important. And is that you may be correct, whatever it might be. And you said it earlier that this person may not be a member of MS-13, but he was here legally, right? Mm-hmm. How is that even, okay, let's say he is here illegally, and he was.
You want him to have the right to a trial.
No, but not even that. Is it justification that now he's going to be sent to prison for the rest of his life? The Justice Minister of El Salvador said the only way that somebody gets out of this prison is in a coffin. So basically, we sent this man without any sentencing at all to a prison and to sending somebody?
No, when I say we have our disagreements, you believe he's not a part of MS-13. We, on the other hand,
Bryce,
looking at the evidence,
you think he's a part of MS-13 when you said there's no evidence to suggest that?
I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he is.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. So we're saying that we wrongfully sent this guy without proving he's in MS-13, and now he's in jail for the rest of his life?
I wouldn't say wrongfully.
I do want to
prove substantial evidence.
He's in jail for the rest of his life.
You're done.
okay with that?
We're moving on.
We're
moving on to local government news. In terms of local government news, Braun signed Senate Bill 1 into law, which cuts residential property taxes. About 2/3 of Hoosiers will see cuts of under $100 per year, but only about half of those will see no tax cuts, according to the Indy Star. So the residential taxes are very modest, while the business tax cuts are large. So Hoosiers seem to be a little confused on what to think, whether they think it's a good or a bad thing. The article I read on the Indy Star, people they don't even know what to think. So I'm going to start with what you guys think.
If you watched our last episode, this is a very important issue to me. I've been covering this for a long time. And I would just like to start off by saying it's a very rare moment, because there were protests about this where the teachers union and Republicans were actually protesting the same thing. They both hate this bill. Now, they hate it for very different reasons, but for a brief minute we had peace in the world, if you would like to think about that. But basically, when Mike Braun signed this bill, I would like to say he just created himself to be a one-term president, because he told his voter base that he was going to turn the tax properties here in Indiana back to the pre-2020, pre-2017 laws. That's not what he's doing right now. So a lot of his supporters are like, hey, you said you're going to do this. This is not it. This is barely like half of what you wanted to do. So his supporters are very upset about that. A lot of people from Indiana are very upset about that. And when I was listening to them talk on various different shows around the city, the lieutenant governor mentioned that this is step one in a 3-step plan, was his exact quote, which my initial reaction was like, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. So I almost wonder if he almost got caught in a little lie there, but this is the first time I'm hearing of a 3-step plan. If it is a 3-step plan, good start, I think Hoosiers would agree. But I'm not hearing a lot of conversation about this 3-step plan coming from the Braun-Beckwith administration. So that's where his supporters are starting to get a little angry with him right now.
Bryce, what do you have to say about it? I know you're big on property taxes.
I mean, I kind of agree with Chris. I'm really interested to see how this plays out. I know this was a very controversial bill. While it doesn't directly affect me because I'm not a property owner, I am curious to see how it plays out and what the next steps are.
Yeah, as I was reading up on this bill, as Chris was saying, this was a rare moment where both the teachers union and liberals and some Republicans could come together and say, this we don't want this bill to proceed.
Right.
And I have my own objections to it. I think this is a lose-lose bill. I think for one, that this is, and I think this is statewide, so this isn't to any specific jurisdiction or district, but it's going to lessen, it's going to cut about $1.8 billion in revenue over the course of the next 3 years. And that's why the teachers union were so heavily advocating against this law, is because that's going to directly affect the quality of education, the pay for teachers, and any benefit and social service that people particularly care about, like education. And so I think that, especially in a state that already performs so poorly in education, that the last thing we should be doing is threatening the revenue of our education system at large.
So are you saying that this kind of goes hand in hand with the Department of Education and Trump wanting to diminish it?
To some degree. I think it's not real. I don't think so. I think this is more of like education is one of the most state-centric issues in our federal system, where
like over 50% of our budget goes to education right
exactly.
now. So,
and like most states, the most salient issue, or the issue where they have the most unilateral control over, is education. And so this is definitely like a state's issue. And so and also too, another thing this bill kind of inadvertently does is that it might empower, and this could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on where on the aisle you stand, but it'll empower local communities to levy taxes and to increase income taxes in an attempt to increase their surplus because of the deficit that they have. So
basically what I'm getting from talking about this is everybody's mad about this. Because the left side of the aisle is worried they're going to lose some resources. The right side of the aisle is like, hey, we're getting ripped off here. You said you were going to do this for us and you're not. So nobody likes this. Welcome to the state of Indiana.
And have you heard of a response from Braun on this at all?
Since
does he even care that the whole state of Indiana is like mad?
The only thing I've seen from Braun is before he signed the bill, at the day before he signed the bill, his lieutenant governor actually came out and said that he should veto this bill. Now this came after the lieutenant governor was a little bit saying that he should support the bill, but then the day before he signed it, he said he should veto it. Obviously, Braun didn't care. He signed the bill into effect anyway, which I think, Braun and Beckwith don't really have the greatest relationship. So,
and I think
and that's just how Indiana picks its lieutenant's governor.
Right, so exactly. Such a unique way. And that's where
if you want a rabbit hole to look down to, look that up. That's an interesting process.
An interesting process.
It is.
And how Micah Beckwith became the lieutenant governor. Oh my goodness, Braun was so upset by that. But I think he, in an attempt to try to make everybody satisfied, he's pleasing nobody. And that's where the political calculation is. If I'm Braun, right, and I know that whatever I want to do here, I'm going to make one group happy, and I should probably try to make my base happy, right? Then why not I just go all in and just say, hey, this is what the platform I was elected on to some degree in the primary throw. This is what I campaigned on, and then now I'm not going to follow through with it because of practical concerns from from other Republicans who have.
This is why I mentioned at the beginning of this issue. Like I think he's going to be a one-term governor because a lot of people don't like this.
I don't know what he is planning to do. I don't know what he thinks. I guess we'll probably see some sort of press release come out this week, and hopefully maybe he does an interview or something. But moving on to more political topics in Indiana, House Bill 1144 could absolutely slash Carroll County's judicial capacity by 50%, which would threaten access to justice for countless residents. Judge Troy Hawkins of Carroll County warns this move would create massive delays in criminal and civil cases, which kind of goes into what we were discussing earlier. and it would violate the right to a speedy trial and drive up costs for taxpayers. So Bryce, go ahead and get us started on this topic.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Judge Troy Hawkins over the weekend, and he kind of filled me in on some information about this bill. So not only is it Carroll County that could lose 50% capacity of their magistrate, but also 8 other rural counties in Indiana would lose one of their superior court. This bill is also aiming to add 4 judges or add courts in 4 different larger counties that are in need of them. But the biggest problem I have with this bill is in rural communities, courts are really important because that's where you go for all your legal proceedings, everything. So if you're going to take a court away, not only is that going to cost the county thousands of dollars because they're going to have to house extra inmates, that's going to cause law enforcement to work way harder, but it's also going to halt the justice process. And a lot of people aren't going to have access to those resources they need, whether that be civil, criminal, whatever it may be, and it's just going to halt that whole process.
So talk to me a little bit about what could be the positives from this. Is there any?
As far as I've looked into it, I don't see how there is a positive out of this other than it's saving money for the state.
Have you? What have you seen?
For positives, I haven't
positives
seen
and
anything.
negatives.
Like Bryce said, the only positive I see is people talk, oh, we're going to save a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's about.
But I think we might be saving money, but this
and
is something.
But in the long run.
I guess the only positive I saw from reading up on this, and I'm against this bill, I want to preface, but I think it was because they said, I think some Republicans were saying that because there's higher demand for justices and because there's prolonged waiting times in places like Hamilton County that are exploding in population and stuff, that we need to make sure that those areas can have enough judges and magistrates to enact the justice process. But during that process, they're literally removing justices that are needed elsewhere, and thus creating a deficit in these places that you said that will absolutely impact the ability for the justice system to give and to pass sentences in a timely manner. Where Bryce mentioned this before the show, where it could have constitutional implications, where Americans have the right to a speedy trial. And if there's not enough judges to go around to do that, that could really prolong the waiting time.
And I do want to point out these rural communities. So let's just say it costs $62 a day to house an inmate, because it's ridiculously expensive to house an inmate. So say $62 a day, you're housing an extra 30 inmates at $62 a day for 30 days, just because the whole process is slowed down. That's going to cost the county roughly $55,000 a month.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Which these rural communities, I don't know if you've ever been to a rural community. I come from a pretty rural community. Yeah. That's a lot of money.
And it may even end up costing the state more money to not have, from what it sounds like, to not have these judges and these magistrates, or at least keeping the ones they have. That's all we're advocating is just keeping the ones that are already there to make sure they can enforce it, because if not, they may actually, like you were saying, it may end up costing the state more money.
That's my biggest takeaway is, looking at this, I think it's going to, long term, I think it's going to cost these rural communities more money by eliminating these courts.
Yeah. My question for you, Bryce, real quick before we move on here. You see a lot in the Republicans talking at the federal and state level. It seems like the big agenda is the limiting of government and the shrinking of government. Yeah. Do you think this is a result of the talking points from President Trump and even Governor Braun at some points, or is this its own thing?
I really don't know. That's a really good point.
I think it's correlated.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Could be.
You think? Yeah.
I mean, I think American politics has overall become more nationalized, and so whatever Donald Trump, the leader of the Republican Party, is prioritizing, and that's limiting government and cutting spending. This is an expected result of that.
And I think it's a double-edged sword, because not only is Trump doing this, but Governor Braun is also advocating this.
Exactly.
So you've got both these sides kind of coming down on there.
Yeah.
So. Are we agreeing on something?
I know.
Oh, what? Okay.
Maybe cutting spending may have some downsides to it. Wow, who would have known?
Right.
Who would have guessed?
Okay, well, I'm glad we can all be friends here. But anyway,
the mere mention of friends was mentioned, and we had to immediately.
Okay, sorry. Okay, maybe not friends, but you're agreeing on something, so whoop-de-doo. Yeah. Anyway,
we'll take it.
You brought up Trump, and that's our next topic that we want to talk about. Is during his first term, he wanted to privatize the Postal Service. That is one issue that he still wants to push. And Chris, Bryce, what would this really mean for consumers? Because this would affect everybody.
Trump's saying that the post office right now, the way it is, in his words, hemorrhaging money from the federal government right now. And then you see the post office is in a very competitive business, because you have people like Amazon, UPS, FedEx that are all privatized. And I think many people would argue they do it better than the post office. I don't think I've met a single person that has a great opinion on the way post office delivers stuff right now. But yeah, he's saying it's hemorrhaging money. He wants to try to transition this into the private market that you see with a lot of the delivery services here. Bryce, what would you think about if this were to actually?
So I was doing some research about USPS or whatever, the United States Postal System, and like the last decade, they've lost billions of dollars. So privatizing this, yeah, it could generate more revenue, and you wouldn't see as like much money out of taxpayer pockets. My only issue with privatizing the United States Postal Service is members of rural communities. I mean, I feel like that's just it could really limit and halter their access to mail service.
And also, this isn't a service that is supposed to be making money. I mean, I don't understand why is a postal service.
I'm not saying making money. I'm saying, but they're losing so much money.
An outlandish amount of money.
Okay, but also this is literally for our founding fathers. This is one of the things that they unanimously agreed upon. That this was one of the defining functions of the state, was that we need to make sure that people can, people get their mail. That and Thomas Jefferson famously, I mean, this was one of his, I forget the quote, but this was something that he cared about tremendously.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know the ins and outs and how much money they're losing and stuff, but for one, I definitely think that I think that Trump's disdain for the USPS is in large part due to 2020 and him losing the election and him blaming mail-in ballots and stuff, and all a part of this effort to make it harder for people to cast their ballots in 2020. So I think some of that
That's interesting that you just
because I remember in
that up.
2020
Right.
this is when it was coming up, and in my view he was doing this in an attempt to try to decrease the USPS's power to be able to
Mail-in ballots.
for mail-in ballots and stuff.
For me, I'm really at a crossroads with this issue because as a Republican, I'm all for the privatization of industries like that. But at the same time, I do firmly believe that our founding fathers were some of the brightest thinkers this world has ever seen, and this was an issue that was very dear to their hearts. I feel like if you would ask a lot of people if the USPS should go away, their response would be yes, because you see, when FedEx pulls up, say, oh, my Amazon package here. When USPS shows up, it's like, oh, heck no, they're bringing my bills over. I don't want my bills to come through. So that's why I think a lot of people will say, yeah, get rid of them. But in terms of the political side of it, I think it's very much an interesting issue to talk about.
Oh yeah, and this is something too that I haven't put a lot of research into. But I think, and certainly, I don't know. For me, I always think positively of the USPS. I don't know. I think that may just because of our backgrounds and stuff. But most people I know, they're always happy to know that, hey, this is an organization that is also, for one, it's ran by, or the people who work in the USPS are phenomenal workers, and the conditions that they work in are terrible.
Yeah.
And so for one,
God bless them. I love online shopping.
Right. Yeah. So nothing but good luck for them. They're providing a service to rural communities, to people all across our country, to make sure that everyone has access to get their mail.
The rural communities, I think, is an interesting part because Bryce, as you mentioned, you live in a rural community. Like, how's your experience been with them out there?
So like the small town I live in, our mail service, it's pretty good, but I mean, I have family that lives like out in like the boonies, like they live out in the middle of nowhere, and I know getting mail out there can be a real hassle.
Yeah, and it'll be even harder for them to get mail because I feel you on living in a rural area. I want my packages.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And I don't live that far out, but I mean, it's kind of scary to think about, and I wonder what was going to happen moving on with this. But we're going to go ahead, take a break. We'll be right back to discuss the topics we've covered this semester and what Hounds think about finals week coming up.
National, local, campus. Headlines you won't find anywhere else. From the White House to your community, we've got you covered. Stay informed and stay connected. Don't miss out on the stories shaping our world. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. UNDTV News.
Like I said, it is the last episode of the semester. Next week is finals week, and we thought it'd be fun to go around and get the Hounds' opinion on finals week and what plans they have for the summer.
All right, I'm here with the certified academic weapon. I know you're ready for finals, aren't you?
I'm completely ready. I'm going to ace every single one of them because I am the best.
Once you get these finals over with, what are your plans for summer break?
Probably taking over the world. Summer domination.
Low-key, me too. That's a real one right there. All right, what are your plans for this summer?
I
a lot of festive activities, and then besides that, nothing. Of course, I'm a good person.
Would you be willing to elaborate on said festive activities?
I probably would have to get a lawyer first.
I know you are just so excited for finals week, as everybody is. You ready for him, though?
Yeah, I'm ready for him. I'm not really worried about him, to be honest.
That's awesome. He's just an academic weapon right there. Speaking of getting finals over, you got any plans for summer?
Football and work. That's all.
He's trying to bring a natty to UIndy. Let's go.
Okay, so we have done quite a few episodes. Hammer and Nail was a new show that we decided to produce and do this semester, thanks to Chris, and really, it just came about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm graduating. Chris is basically going to be in charge of it next semester, so you better go ahead and keep me updated on that.
I got you.
But we talked about a lot over this semester, so what was your favorite episode, or what was your favorite topic that we discussed?
In terms of favorite episodes, not to be cliche, but I'm going to have to go with this one right here. And mainly, you want to, and listen to my reasoning here.
Okay.
Because I am actually just really proud of how this group grew over the semester. When we first started doing episodes way back in January, our first episode didn't even go out because let's be honest, you saw it, you were there. It wasn't our best work. But I'd like to think that now here, as we're like, a couple days away from May, this seems like a legit show. This seems like we're actually having some production stuff here. So I'm just really proud of the way that everybody here grew. You know, I love all the support we get from behind the scenes, people running the prompters, people putting all the stuff together. You know, none of this would be possible without them. So
thanks, Liam Blaze and
Exactly.
O'Neil Becker and Rick Dunkel. You guys
are the
have
best.
literally made this show happen. So thanks, and thanks for dealing with me. Politics is very hard to discuss, especially like at our age, because it affects us the most. And Levi, not gonna lie, sometimes when you talk, I get scared, and sometimes I feel the same way with you, Chris. You guys are
don't worry, you got us too next year. So if you
I
don't
know,
like us,
I know.
you better learn to love us. and that's an interesting point you bring up, because if you watch this, you'd probably think that me and Levi are mortal enemies. Outside the show, we're good buddies.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
hang
you guys
out,
are
you know,
cool.
we talk about a bunch of different stuff. You know, we disagree politically, but my main point is that doesn't mean you can't be friends out there. If you got someone that disagrees with you politically, who
And
cares?
that's just what I hate about politics so much, is like it is completely dividing this world into two, and I hate it. But that's what I love about the show, is we can come together and talk about it all, and I hope that you continue to produce the show well and, you know, continue to have these conversations. And I also love getting everyone's opinions on campus. But
You know,
Bryce,
at the end of the day, we know we're all Americans here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We all care about the well-being of this nation, and that's what politics is. It's just a disagreement on how we make America the best place it is.
we were talking about that before we started the show, about the Indy 500 and how patriotic it is, and just how beautiful this country can be, even though most of the things you see is negative.
Yeah.
But Bryce, what was your favorite episode or your favorite topic?
I'm gonna have to go with Chris on this one. I would say probably this episode, and the reason I say that, I mean, just seeing how far along like we've all came together as a group, and then having Levi on the show has been a great addition. Just hearing that bickering back and forth between Levi and Chris, and they may disagree, but as soon as the camera's cut, I mean, we're shaking hands and asking how each other's semesters are going. So I think just this combination of this group that we've had, and just being blessed to have this opportunity to get in front of a camera and talk about the things that matter the most. I mean, I think it's been a great experience, and
And let me say that Bryce has never been in front of a camera before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's doing a great
I
job.
was about to say, how about this guy? You saw him at the beginning of the semester,
And
now
now-
he's
Didn't even
a
wanna look at
completely
the
different
camera.
person.
And next semester, he's taking 109,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Intro to common or TV and radio. So like, I'm glad that we got you like in this, you know, because you do a great job.
Welcome to the Thunderdome,
I
baby.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Levi, we're about to go on summer break. And I don't know about you, but sometimes
Thank
on
God.
summer break, I know. Sometimes on summer break, my brain turns off. This summer, I can't really do that.
Yeah.
But most of the time, that does happen. And I know that happens to other people too. So in terms of legislation, what should viewers be on the lookout for? What could happen over the summer? What is coming up that we should care about?
Yeah, I would say overall, broadly, just pay attention to the news, right? I mean, there's always something happening, and the more informed you are as a citizen, the better decisions you're able to make in the next elections. I would definitely look at SCOTUS rulings, and for an Indiana bill, there was one bill, SB 146, that would actually increase teachers' pay, which is something I really advocate a lot for, and that should bring an end, or at least meet the teacher shortage that we're currently in. There's a deficit of about 5,000 teachers in Indiana, give or take. So I'm really happy that bill passed and stuff. So yeah, I would just say, watch the news, watch this show next semester, and whatever it is.
Right here. Also, pay attention to local government, like
Yes.
Levi said.
Yes.
We talk about the national government, but the local ones that matter.
Yes.
These are the people that are
That-
managing your money.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's where everything happens.
Local government mainly affects us.
Exactly.
That's the most
Like,
important.
we
to-
are the
to-
next
yeah.
generation.
Yes.
It's going to affect us the most.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, I'm kind of sad. Okay. Well, thank you for tuning in to the last episode of the semester. Hammer and Nail, the show where we don't just talk about politics, we break it down, dissect it, and sometimes we hit it with the hammer of truth. For UND TV, I'm Kendall Pierson alongside Chris Hammer, Bryce Howard, and our guest, Levi. We'll see you all in September.